And that breaking news is in Richmond, where this flaring at the Chevron refinery is under investigation. Now, this is what it looked like about an hour ago.
Petroleum that spilled into the San Francisco Bay and San Pablo Bay Tuesday.
Smell like somebody spilled gasoline in front of my house.
So people in Solano County may have felt the impact of the smoke, and you can see it a little bit
At
still.
this point, we have seen sheen in the San Pablo Bay. There have been unconfirmed reports that it has reached the shoreline. We'll know more with the full assessment in the morning.
So Chevron's been here for over 100 years, and they are the second largest polluter in California.
The refinery started here in 1902, 1903. The city was incorporated in 1907, and Richmond High has been, their mascot has been the Oilers since like 1911.
There's this big refinery, they seem to be the good guys, they paint themselves as the good guys. Let me critically think here for a second, what is really going on, My name is Marc Huerta, I'm a junior, I go here at Stanford University. I'm an electrical engineering major, I'm from Richmond, California.
Hi, my name is Marisol Cantú. I'm a third generation Richmond resident and born and raised here. I am a community organizer and activist around climate justice issues. To me, I really talk about the climate crisis because change doesn't create the urgency that the community really is feeling right now in Richmond. I think globally, climate change, people think of polar bears and ice melts. When I think of climate change and the climate crisis, I think of my community. I think of Black and brown folks here living next to the second largest polluter in California, Chevron refinery.
So my name is Andrés Soto. Since August of 2012, I have been the Richmond organizer for Communities for a Better Environment. Climate change to me is just one of the terms we're using for what I would more call climate chaos. That what we're seeing because of the destruction of the atmosphere is a drastic change in climate patterns all around the globe. Here in Richmond, we've seen it directly because we have one of the major contributors to climate change, climate chaos here with the Chevron Richmond refinery.
I was learning about it in elementary school. Ever since I was a kid, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, they would come to our schools and try to act like the good guys, they were good people in the community. In 6th grade, we would go to the field trips to the refinery. It's kind of weird to go to a field trip to a refinery. They had a little swimming pool and stuff there, so they let us swim as 6th graders and hey, yeah, this is great for the community, we're positive, so it's just basic propaganda, and it wasn't until later on I was like, wait, that's kind of weird, Yeah.
When I was young, I actually had to ask my parents inform me that the first Wednesday of every month, because I had heard an alarming sound, was a Chevron refinery making sure that their alarm system was working if ever there was a large explosion and we needed to shut and bunker into our homes.
What did you call Grandma? Grandma, what did you call Grandma? Because Grandma will pick up. Fire! You're not getting died. Look, Barry.
That in particular was one of my first experiences of understanding that there was some type of polluter, some type of company that was harming us and would be forcing us into our homes, and that the first Wednesday I needed to make sure that I heard that alarm to make sure that it was working. On a personal level, I think my first exposure to the effects of climate crisis were seeing my baby brother when he was a newborn on breathing treatments because he was born with asthma, and having to see him with those breathing treatments and in and out of the hospital.
I actually first learned about the refinery in a positive way because when I first started teaching here, I needed supplies for my classroom, and Chevron was offering this 2-for-1 deal on Donors Choose, which is like a program for teachers to be able to ask for supplies and make projects. So they were actually funding lots of schools to get donations and to fund their projects. And so my first impression of them was super positive. And then I learned about what's actually happening. Maybe that, isn't the best organization to take money from and to support.
Well, when I was a child, my next door neighbor, my best friend, the Woodson family, the father worked as a painter. But because he was an employee, we got the benefits through them of being able to go to the Rod and Gun Club. So they have a whole facility, recreational facility over there with 3 swimming pools, a basketball gym, a bowling alley, a clubhouse, with a full commercial kitchen, softball fields, a shooting range for employees. And we used to go there as kids on the days it was hot.
In retrospect, my family and simply living here was my introduction. Being confused by seeing air or clouds that I thought were beautiful actually kind of flare-ups from the refinery, especially schools that are very close proximity to Chevron refinery, and you see them not being able to go outside, having to close doors, and in those areas they are very much learning through this experience of the climate crisis happening to them, and yet our curriculum isn't suited and isn't well equipped to really dismantle what the climate crisis is and how it affects us personally.
Everything. I want them to know how it affects them, and that it's not just this thing that's so far away that they don't need to worry about or that they don't need to know about. I think they really need to know that it's human caused and that we're really the ones that are causing this acceleration to happen. And while we can think so much about all of our individual actions and take all of those small things, like really there's a disproportionate amount of harm being done by large companies, large organizations, and those are really going to be the places that we need to hit if we want to make the changes.
Most prominently, I've seen the effects of climate change through the wildfires that have happened the last 4 years. There hasn't been that many wildfires this year, but last 4 years before this, it's just been wildfires after wildfire, and I would wake up and there's smoke in the air, and that's never happened to me before. The first 15, 16 years of my life, I've never seen it. Lived in the Bay Area my whole life, and that's the most prominent way. It just happened 4 years in a row, and before that, not even my parents had seen it. My daily life, as a kid, I think growing up, a lot of my friends had asthma, and growing up and reading about the effects of these type of polluters like the refinery that we have, I learned that in Richmond we have twice the national average in terms of childhood asthma rates. So it's directly related to the fact that there's a bunch of pollution around the area, So I think that's something that I still have asthma too, so that's something I deal with.
2 words, smoke days on campus. I feel like these wildfires are getting more and more intense every single year. Now, like, oh yeah, fire season. That's like a thing that we deal with every single year. And we know that it's coming around this time. But I feel like in general, I've seen a lot more fluctuating and more polar climate and like weather changes. And as a result of that, also natural disasters.
So the fires that we've had here in Northern California and in Richmond and the Bay Area specifically over the last 3-4 years are something like I have never seen before in my lifetime. And it is a tremendously foreboding and scary experience when the whole sky is just filled with soot and smoke. And I'm a father and a grandfather, and so I worry about my children and my grandchildren and, you know, what they're going to have to confront if I've already seen this kind of damage in my lifetime.
Because the people that are being affected by this, like the refinery, like climate change, are predominantly people of color. And they've got this huge disproportionate effect because nobody wants to live around a refinery or a landfill or things like that, which then makes the housing cheap, which as a result of many, many, many years of injustices, like people of color are the ones who are able to afford those places. And so they're the ones being hurt the most. And so I would encourage them to not just listen to the money, but listen to the people that are there and are being affected by it.
So, you know, they're spreading cash around town in order to try to buy the hearts and minds of the people who are less engaged, you know, because very few people are willing to bite the hand that feeds them. So this is a way of co-opting nonprofit and community-based organizations.
Climate change, it really shows like it's a culmination of the hundreds of years and thousands of years of like, you know, humanity's greed, like just capitalism most recently, you know what I mean? Like I feel like it's definitely a direct result of capitalism and, you know, government failure, like racism, and just a whole bunch of things, you know, just piling into one, you know, and get the result that you get here.
While I do think these institutions have are able to help in these issues, I also think that just academia and activism have a complicated relationship in the sense that people here often want to center these movements on themselves instead of like the needs of the community. And I think a lot of it just has to do with us asking, and like these institutions asking the communities they're in what they can do for them instead of just going in and positioning themselves as the leaders of everything going on.
Yeah, the whole framework of divest and invest, yeah, it's an interesting one. Even coming into this interview, I really had to check myself. You know, I'm doing it for Mara, who's a Richmond resident and freshman at Stanford. But a lot of times, corporate entities, private institutions, ivory towers do not center the work that is being done, and they don't even create a bridge in order to center community organizations and grassroots movement that have been doing this work, and yet they work in their silos and constantly create a narrative that is sometimes pro-corporation and not conducive to radical liberation of Black and Brown and BIPOC communities in their entirety. And so, you know, having huge endowments from people that are making their money off of extractive and exploitative labor is a huge issue. We are a city of 110,000 people, predominantly BIPOC folks. And when we look at our city, you see that areas that are the most harmed, the most impacted by polluters are predominantly Black and Brown. They're underserviced, they're under-resourced, and you can see that they are almost the forgotten community members in Richmond, and that is very different from people that live on the hill versus people that live in the flats, is what we call the area surrounding Chevron. I imagine a city, I imagine Richmond no longer being corrupted by Chevron in air, in our water, in our soil, in our local governance, in our public safety, and through the police unions. I imagine a world where there are art sculptures on the Greenway, and there are festivals at Wildcat Canyon and Miller Knox, and that there are science and summer camps that aren't reliant on the need to learn about Chevron, but to learn about our incredible air. I imagine a world where babies are not born with asthma. I imagine a world where our elders are no longer suffering from respiratory issues. I imagine a world where people who have been most harmed are covered by insurance because of the health impacts that they have sustained throughout their lifetimes. I imagine a world free of Chevron, and I imagine that right here in Richmond. I don't need to go to see polar bears. I don't need to go to see the Amazon. Those communities are fighting for their own resources. I'm fighting for mine, and I hope that our city can come together and imagine a world that is no longer reliant on the fossil fuel stronghold that we have here in Richmond.